bit. Just a little bit. See, I don't know which.
I know, right? Oh, so can you see us up in the?
Yes, I can. And there's a delay.
I don't. So welcome. I can start now. Welcome, everyone. This is Susan Pollara from Emtrain. I'm an account executive and DEI practitioner. Thank you for joining us today for our LinkedIn Live with Nicola Buchanan, who is the Associate Director for Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. Welcome, Nicola.
Thank you, Susan. Hello, everyone.
Yay, we are so delighted you are here today and that we are going to be having this conversation that just as we were planning for this, that we were saying, this is the conversation that it doesn't feel like DEI practitioners are, everyone's thinking this, but not actually having this. And the conversation is around the challenges that DEI professionals are facing as they're trying to do this important work. But before we roll into that, can you share with our audience your background and what your role is and how you came to the role?
Certainly, yeah. And before I even get into that, again, I just need to extend my sincere thanks to you and to Emtrain for extending this invitation my way. I'm glad that you asked. I'm glad I said yes and that we're crafting this conversation together. So thank you. My background. I work in healthcare. As you mentioned, I work at a cancer hospital based in New York City, and I've been working there for pretty much my whole adult life. I've had several different roles in this institution, but my last role before what I currently do, I worked in faculty development and diversity programs. I worked a lot in the summers with students, sort of crafting internship experiences for high school, undergraduate, and medical students, primarily of color, and sort of shepherding them through the STEM process for this hospital as they were, on their way to completing medical school and ideally coming back to work at MSK, either as a trainee or a fellow, that kind of thing. And then as our Office of Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion was being formed and sort of being reformatted, an opportunity came my way to serve the institution, not just its student population, but really focusing even broader on employee workforce. And so in February of 2020, our team gathered. And so the Office of Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion at MSK, we started in February of 2020. And I still serve as its associate director. As you might imagine, February of 2020, we were all bright-eyed and so happy, yay. And then March happened and the world took a hard left. And then May happened and George Floyd was murdered. And our professional and personal lives changed overnight. With the murder of this man, and it impacted the work that we do at this hospital, has impacted the work that we do every day since then. So that's a very answer, yes. A big question.
Yeah, so many questions. So just to set the stage for folks who have tuned in, what does the workforce look like at Memorial Sloan Kettering, as well as what does your team look like? How many employees and how many people on your team, right? Because I think that
yeah, sure, that's a great question.
Impacts the work.
Currently, we have about 22,000 employees who work at MSK. We're 22,000 strong. Our team in the Office of EDI is a team of 5. So I'm really just blessed to be a part of this team. We really have each other's back, but just sort of even laying that out. The work is a lot. The workers are a little few, but we are a mighty team and we definitely are making an impact, I think, across our 22,000 employee workforce. But that just goes to show you even one thing in terms of challenge and really trying to cater to as many people as possible. We are a team of 5 in service of 22,000. So there's that.
Yeah, and where does the team sit? Are you under HR? Where does it sit within the organization?
Correct. Yeah. So our team at the institution, we're a function of HR. So yes, we are housed in HR. And I like to think of like we're a container within HR, specifically within talent acquisition, and then broadly in human resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what does your workforce look like?
In terms of demographics, is that what you mean?
All the different kinds of, when we first started working together, I was like, oh, great. So there's doctors and there's some support staff, but
Right.
It is so broad that I think when people think about this work, that's one of the pieces that contributes to the challenges of
Oh, sure.
who's part of your workforce. So first, sort of the different kinds of roles, and then maybe the demographics.
Sure. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I work at a hospital, but I am not a nurse and I'm not a doctor. I am not in a patient-facing role. I used to be, but now I'm not. But certainly there are clinicians there. So what you would typically think, doctors and nurses, but there's also executive staff, executive hospital leadership. There are people who, work in radiology who have to care for patients and take care of their scans and read their scans. There's support staff in terms of office staff who sort of help craft and create and manage doctors' offices or who do intake for patients who come in. We have people who work in environmental services at the institution who make sure that our space is safe and healthy and clean and up to code for patients and families and employees. There are people who work in mail services. So it's really, if you think of it, it's really a world, right? Just with 22,000 people, but just it encompasses, it is so much more than doctors and nurses. They are a very important part of the healthcare organization, and so is all the other, roles that I just mentioned there. And there are way more than even just what I've mentioned now. We have attorneys, so it really, we run the gamut. We run the gamut at MSK.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to answer the second
Yes.
part of your question.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because we have such a diversity of roles. We also have diversity of generations there too, right? So research is showing that just the workforce currently has 5 generations who are working at the same time. Mm-hmm. Memorial is no different, right? And so when you think about EDI, I know everybody calls it DEI, EDI. We only have 26 letters in the alphabet. We're trying to do our best. What do you call it? For us, we call it EDI. But when it comes to this, and either maybe how do we respond to certain events, even taking into account just the diversity of role and position we have at the institution, who may have access to a screen, who's in front of a screen all day, every day, versus who may not be, including some clinicians or surgeons, right, who are in an operating room, or someone who works in our cafeteria who may not be in front of a computer screen all the time. So when it comes even time for us to communicate messaging around Juneteenth and what is our hospital going to do to commemorate Juneteenth or things like that, we have to be really creative and careful about how we communicate messaging to people who we want to be as inclusive as possible and not leave anyone out, but that can also present its own set of challenges. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I think as we've worked together, so in the way that we work together, Emtrain, MSK and Emtrain have partnered together to provide unconscious bias training via our e-learning to the MSK population, unconscious bias training, diversity and inclusion, some powerful micro lessons. And as we have worked more and more together through this process, this deeper understanding of just how diverse the organization is from the different generations, the different roles, and how those challenges are impacting the work that you do. So one question I have is, when everyone was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and everything seemed possible, February 2020, what were some of your goals at that point? And can you just talk through how the role and what you were trying to do changed so dramatically by, May 26th, 2020?
Sure. So
easy answer.
Right.
Yeah, easy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The short way to answer that is we had a plan, and that plan just had a lot more space in it. And so what initially was supposed to take us either a year or a year and a half to really roll out at the institution was like, okay, actually you have 3 months to get this, including part of our original plan was to include new learning, right, for our workforce that's centered around EDI. So again, working at a healthcare institution, every employee is required to take mandatory learning so that the hospital keeps its accreditation status. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we were going to incorporate new EDI learning courses. So we had time to select a vendor, make these decisions, that kind of thing. And then the end of May happened. And again, it was just sort of, okay, we need to interact with our workforce in a more urgent way. We deployed for the first time a survey solely focused on EDI issues across our institution, essentially asking employees, what have you experienced at MSK regarding equality, diversity, inclusion? And then it was incumbent upon us to listen to what employees had to say and then respond to it. Difficult really to hear, but also really appreciative that people trusted us with their answers so that we could do something with it. Part of that something is rolling out these Emtrain learning courses that focus on unconscious bias and how to build belonging at work, and also shifting conversations to talking about Black Lives Matter, anti-Asian hate. These are conversations at work that we've never had before on this kind of level. So I'm getting goosebumps talking.
Yeah, I know. And as we talk about how, there was the vision, but all of a sudden it got truncated, and the urgency, right, became more significant, as this all became much more of a priority. What are some of the challenges that you ran into? So given the fact that there's 5 generations in your workforce, given the fact that you have some people who are, probably have the highest academic credentials possible for their field, and other people who have come in, straight from a trade school or straight from high school, like so many differences of thought and background. What are some of the challenges that you've faced as you've been doing this work?
Yeah, so some of the challenges our team has faced revolve around communication, and really when you think just different generations, right? Like, and I'm just going to hold up my cell phone right here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Different generations interact with technology and particular cell phones differently, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And so maybe there are some generations who feel we really don't need to be communicating about this at work. I'm not always on my phone at work. When I'm at work, I'm at work. And so therefore, I don't know why we have to talk about outside of work at work. And then you have in the same workforce, people who are always connected and always being updated about things that are happening outside of work while they're at work. Right. And really how that sets up the expectation about, well, where is the notification even while I'm at work about what is my work doing about this? What is my work's position on social issues? And do I feel comfortable working in an organization that is not speaking or has a statement in response to X, Y, or Z? So you contrast those, that's just 2, right? But just 2, how do you appeal to and communicate with effectively that type of generational mix. And what is the balance there? It's a tricky dance to do.
Mhm.
And even just trying to, there's no hard and fast rule that we have that says, okay, we've developed a rubric, and if it just, cross section here, therefore we will create an email. And if it doesn't, then we won't. It's not that simple. But we examine everything case by case. We have become nimble in our learning, and the feedback that we get from our employees really helps us decipher, okay, this is really what's important to our employees, and therefore we really need to say something. And even in me saying that, it comes across as being reactive. So it's just, that's what I mean. Like when I say the challenges, it really is a tricky dance that we're doing, but we're learning as we're doing. We've had to start somewhere. And I think, progress is really the key that we're reaching for. So again, I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. I'm interested. So you spoke of that you did that initial survey to hear feedback about people's experiences, and then for folks who are tuning in who aren't aware of the Emtrain learning, embedded within our learning are these feedback mechanisms with questions and insights. But how else are you getting feedback, and what are some of the, along the continuum of the feedback? We had talked about that some people are like, why are we even talking about this? And other people are, you're not talking about this enough. How are people reaching out to you? Is it, I'm just intrigued about what the different channels are within MSK.
So we have, email. So people either email directly me or send emails to, our team's email, just letting us know directly feedback or their feelings about certain initiatives. We currently have 5 employee resource networks. I know that some industries call them ERGs or BRGs. We call them ERNs. Again,
can you tell us which ones those are? I love talking about ERNs.
I'm happy to talk about the ERN population. So we have 5, and so one is called BLAM, that stands for Black, Latino, Asian, and Multiracial Employees. Allies are welcome to join any of our employee resource networks. We have one called ABLE, Abolishing Barriers and Limitations for Everyone. This is for differently abled employees. One is called Veteran. No explanation there, but for employees who identify as veterans. One is for LGBTQ plus pride. So for employees who identify as members of the LGBTQ plus community. And again, allies are welcome there also across all 5. And then MWM stands for Memorial Women on the Move. And I'm very happy that each employee resource network has executive sponsors. We have a male executive sponsor for our Women on the Move employee resource network. So it is interesting. But those are the 5 that we have. But things even come up within these 5 employee resource networks that gets rolled up to our EDI office that lets us know, okay, here's what employees are really asking for. And that helps us sort of, determine, okay, how do we respond to that? And what do we do about that? And how do we craft relevant programming to answer and talk about things that our employees have questions about? So.
Right. So some of the challenge, so one of my questions is, like, is there budget for the ERNs? Like, how does that work? Because this is one challenge that I hear over and over and over again, that people in DEI roles have this huge, right, like so much on your plate, right? Trying to figure out, the learning, trying to figure out the ERNs, ERGs, trying to figure out how to attract and retain a diverse workforce. But the budget almost feels like an afterthought.
Right.
How, if you're comfortable talking through, like, what kind of support does MSK provide to, like, the ERNs? Like, how does that work? I mean, first of all, you made the investment clearly in the learning, right? So, but how? Because that to me is the biggest challenge that I'm hearing.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And so the budget thing is also tricky. So each of the ERNs have to, follow certain guidelines that our office establishes. But when it comes to, because it has to be tied to the business objective of the hospital, so patient-focused activity, patient-centered activity, as well as educating our workforce and things like that. So, and our groups really do, I think, a tremendous job of producing relevant content and programming that serves its mission. But when it comes to budgetary allotments, each group has to submit a proposal to our office. And so just sort of laying out, this is the event we'd like to produce, and here's what costs will be affiliated with that. And that gets submitted to our office. Our office ultimately comes under our chief diversity officer, who makes the decision about, okay, what budget can be, allocated for a given event. So it's a system.
It's a whole thing. Yeah.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
And when you're saying they're producing content and things, where's that space that gets shared and posted? Is it an internal website? Is it internal communication channels? How's the information get out?
Certainly, yeah. Each employee resource network has its own listserv, but also so they are able to communicate directly with their respective constituents. We post everything that the ERNs create or the events that they do. We post all of that on our EDI site internally. Some things we put on our external facing pages, like, the MSK's either Instagram page or Facebook page, links like that, for different months. So we're just in July, but last month in June for Pride Month, we definitely had employee spotlights highlighting, employees who identify as either LGBTQ+. And so those spotlights were shared internally as well as externally on our Instagram and Facebook pages, things like that. So communicating to our 22K and then broadly too.
Yeah, the theme really, I think, of today is all around communication.
100%.
That's like the most important piece and the biggest challenge. So communicate. What other challenges or sort of words of wisdom do you have for people in a similar role? So let's flip that. So what words of wisdom do you have for people in a role like yours, and how to sort of address or overcome some of these challenges and barriers when, executive leadership is like, yes, we need a chief diversity officer, but no, you have no budget, or you only need 20 minutes of training,
right?
One time every 3 years.
Right.
What are some suggestions?
I got a lot of things to say about that.
Yes.
Well, one, so I mentioned I'm fortunate to be on a team of 5, and we really do support each other. We really do have each other's back. I have encountered people in different industries where they are the one responsible in holding it up for an office or for an organization. And so one word of wisdom, I guess, is to find your tribe, so to speak, either, connecting through things like this, or just, getting connected through different professional organizations so that you are not alone. The work of EDI is important and a lot. And in service of people in this way is a lot, as you are trying to usher in conversations that folks either may not be comfortable having, they're not used to having, and it can be a lot. So find your people who you can learn from, who will listen to you. It is important. And then another piece of wisdom, that sounds so strange for me to say, but
no, it doesn't.
Is you really have to count the wins as they come, because there may be those who say, yeah, that's a great start, it's not enough. We hear that often in my line of work. This is good, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And while that may be true, I know that the work of EDI is a marathon. It is not a sprint. but you still have to count your wins when they come. I'm never going to be someone who completes the New York City Marathon. I'm clear, I'm not doing it. But I do know that, you have people who are cheering you on as you are running the marathon, and they're not saying to you, oh, that's a nice start. You only completed 5 miles, but you have another however many, 21 left to go. No, they're celebrating your wins as you keep running this marathon. So that's what I think of. You have to have people around you who recognize where you started, where you are right now, and are cheering you on to continue the race, because it's a longer journey than I think people realize. I know people want to see change like this. We didn't get here like this. It's going to take time to shift conversation and shift thinking, but count your wins as they come, and they will come, but be sure to count your wins. So
thank you. One of the wins that I have observed, being fortunate enough to work with your team, is how aligned the ED and I team and the learning and development team within Memorial Sloan Kettering are, and that the way your organization works, you both, the two teams, communicate so well together that even if there are differences in approach or ideas, the respectful but authentic way that the teams communicate, I think it's tremendous, and I have learned so much by just being a part of those larger group meetings, that I just want to recognize that to me is a huge win, because organizations are often very siloed, right? And this is what I'm responsible for, and this is don't touch my stuff, and
right.
And you do your stuff,
right?
And that's never going to make change happen.
Yeah.
So
I thank you for saying that. I really do appreciate that, and you are right. Us working together with our colleagues in talent and org development, we do have really a synergy there. So you are right. Yeah, it's important for us to even respect each other as colleagues too. I think if we're really trying to run this marathon together, I think that I know that matters. I also often say, I get to go around the institution all from the comforts of my home, but just, doing different, learning or talking discussions around microaggressions or things like that. But I'm always really intentional about letting people know, just because I work at equality, diversity, inclusion doesn't mean I own it. It's not mine to own, right? So this belongs to everybody. And what is your role to play when it comes to fostering an environment of an inclusion wherever you are? So that matters a lot to us too.
Mm-hmm. Putting the responsibility and onus
on everyone in the conversation. Yeah, it doesn't just belong to me. It doesn't belong to our team of 5. It belongs to everyone.
Mm-hmm. When I joined Emtrain, I was so excited to join and the culture of the organization, but I really set the intention of show up the way I want Emtrain to be. And that's been sort of my recent mantra, in this past year and a half. And because I think when you show up open and willing to learn and authentic, it comes back at you, right? But you, a couple months ago when we started planning for this conversation, we were talking, and I was like, "Tell me your story. How'd you get here? And you have what I found to be a very empowering sort of mantra philosophy about your work, and I would love it because we only have a minute left. If you could share your philosophy about the work that you do.
Yeah, I'll be quick, right? I was one of those people who never really knew what they wanted to do when they grew up, right? Same. And so I just sort of over the years developed this mantra of bloom where you're planted and make it better before you leave. And that has really helped shape the way I approach my work in whatever role I have been in, is just to, while I'm there, bloom, grow deep roots and learn and absorb and learn, but also am I changing it for the better before it's time for me to take on something else.
I love that, and I have found that I've incorporated that into my own personal philosophy, so I thank you for that. And as I work with the young people in my life who are feeling all of this pressure to like know exactly what they want to do.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
where you're planted and make it a little better. And that's also, I think, in the community work we're all trying to do and the rest of our lives. So we are at 2 o'clock Eastern time. I can't thank you enough, Nicola, for this conversation.
Yeah.
Anyone who is watching, if you have more questions for us or would like to reach out, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Nicola. We're always excited to talk about these issues and excited to just grow this community of people who are passionate about DEI work. So thank you so much, Nicola.
Thank you, Susan. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.